bin Ayyub al-Ayyubi, rahimahullah. He was born in the year 1137 and he passed away in the year 1193. And my focus on today's lecture is not going to be so aggressively on his life, meaning that his biography and the battles. I will give a very cursory view of his life and biography. But as we do with all the sages of the ages, our focus is on some of the quotes that they say and the reflections that they have. Because when you look at these quotes and reflections, you get to understand what the mind and the mentality of these individuals are and what kind of progresses them and makes them the people that they are. Now, as I explain Salahuddin Ayyubi rahimahullah's life to you, there are a few things that I want to kind of mention as a preamble. Number one is that the year 1137 exists at a very intricate time in Islamic history. Number one, that in the year 1099 was when the first Crusades had occurred, or the Crusades had besieged Jerusalem. And when they besieged Jerusalem, they had killed scores of people and they had banished people from inside Jerusalem as well. Let's take a history of Masjid al-Aqsa and Israel for a second. Israel is the name of Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salatu wassalam. He had 12 children, and one of those children, Yusuf alayhi salam, out of jealousy, gets casted into a well, and his brothers, they say that a wolf ate him, and Yusuf alayhi salam gets taken to Egypt. Fast forward, all of his brothers and his father come and see him in Egypt, and they settle and they live in Egypt. Time goes on. Now, Ibrahim alayhi salam had two sons. Ismail, who settled in Mecca, built the Kaaba with Ibrahim alayhi salam. With his other son, Ishaq alayhi salam, he built Masjid al-Aqsa. Ibrahim alayhi salam built two masjids. He is not the first person to build the Kaaba. Who built the Kaaba before Ibrahim alayhi salam? Who? Technically, Nuh alayhi salam, then Adam alayhi salam. That is why the Quran very meticulously says, وَإِذْ يَرْفَعُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ الْقَوَاعِدَ مِنَ الْبَيْتِ وَإِسْمَاعِيلُ. That Ibrahim alayhi salam, yarfa'u, rafa' yarfa'u means to raise. He raised the foundations. Allah doesn't say bana. Is yarfa'u Ibrahim al-qawa'ida min al-bayti, that he raised the foundations. The Kaaba was initially built by Adam alayhi salam, destroyed in the flood of Nuh alayhi salam, rebuilt by Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, then built by Ibrahim alayhi salam. But Masjid al-Aqsa was built specifically through the hands of Ibrahim alayhi salam and his son Ishaq alayhi salatu wassalam. And there is a rock. There is a rock. If you look at the picture of the dome of the rock, you'll see there's a golden dome, and it's an octagonal building. And in the center of it, there is a rock, and inside that rock, there is a cave. The Yahud believe that it was on this rock that Ibrahim alayhi salam attempted to sacrifice Sayyidina Ismail alayhi salam, Sayyidina Ishaq alayhi salam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a ram in response or in a result, in lieu of this ram. What do the Muslims believe?
I don't know whether it was Ismail or Ishaq.
Very good. It's interesting is because the Muslims there are few camps amongst the Muslims. One belief, the majority is, that it was Sayyidina Ismail alayhi salatu wassalam. The second opinion is that it was Ishaq alayhi salam. The third opinion is that this incident happened with both children. That both children were opted for sacrifice. My teacher, Mufti al-Haq, is of the opinion that it was Ismail alayhi salam and not Ishaq alayhi salam logically. Why? Is because if you have, and I don't mean to undermine anyone's children or if you have multiple siblings, you're probably wondering which namaz is this adhan from. That's because my adhan pro is still set to New Jersey. So that is why it's giving the adhan of New Jersey Sabah right now. Of their Isha probably. So there's these multiple camps amongst the, so he says, if you have multiple kids, then it's not that difficult to sacrifice. I mean, it is still difficult. But it's like, it's not as difficult if you only had one kid. When Yaqub alayhi salam was blessed, Allah had already told in the Bible and in the Quran that after Ishaq alayhi salam, there's going to be other children. So if you are told there's other children, definitely not going to be able to sacrifice this one. So there is this difference. Anyhow, the Yahud consider it very holy. They also consider it that they're qibla. And that is why they face towards Masjid al-Aqsa when they pray salah. If you see them at the Wailing Wall, they're actually tilted towards the Dome of the Rock. And Masjid al-Aqsa is not just one building. There are 5 masjids in that area, and the conglomeration of all 5 masjids is known as Masjid al-Aqsa. You have Dome of the Rock, which is called Qubbat al-Sakhra. You have Masjid al-Aqsa Jadid, the more newer Masjid al-Aqsa. Then there's an underground Masjid al-Aqsa known as Masjid al-Aqsa Qadim, where there are pillars that are allegedly built by the jinns. Then you have the stable of Sulaiman alayhi salam, which was turned into a masjid by Abdul Malik bin Marwan. It's massive. 70,000 people can pray inside it. It's huge. The first time I went inside there, I was mind blown because I'd never seen videos of Aqsa before going to Aqsa. So when I went inside, I was just blown away as I was going through each area. It was just like a never-ending maze inside there. And this was very holy, and this was very special to the Yahud. As time progressed, when the Byzantine Romans came, they expelled the Yahud, largely the Jews, from Masjid al-Aqsa area. Then when Constantine became Christian and Christianity spread and they held Jerusalem and they had fought off the Persians, allowed the Jews to come for a brief period. When the Romans held control over it after Constantine, they largely expelled the Jews from Jerusalem. When the time of Sayyidina Umar bin al-Khattab radiallahu anhu came, and they conquered Jerusalem, and remember, they conquered Jerusalem without bloodshed. And this is something that I want to say is very important to know, because the Muslims largely did not spill blood in claiming Aqsa. It wasn't their habit. Umar radiallahu anhu comes, he takes control over Masjid al-Aqsa, and after he takes control over Masjid al-Aqsa, he re-allows the Jews to come and inhabit into Masjid al-Aqsa. And there's the famous story of the Holy Church of Sepulchre, where the Holy Church of Sepulchre is like our Mecca and Medina, or our Medina to the Christians. Anyone know why the Holy Church of Sepulchre is so important and so valuable?
Jesus was born there.
Who? Jesus was born in Bethlehem. which in Arabic is Baytul Lahab, Bethlehem. It's in the West Bank. I also visited that area.
Is it where they supposedly have the cross that he was buried on? Or that he was killed on?
The true cross? No. There's an interesting story that the true cross, Salahuddin Ayyubi rahimahullah had sent the true cross to Damascus, an upside down true cross. There's also a theory that the true cross was taken from Heraclius in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and he regained the true cross. And he said, if I got the victory, I will walk to Jerusalem barefoot, and I will do basically like my Hajj over there. And he actually does walk to Jerusalem barefoot out of like honor for it. There are certain things in Christendom that have a lot of difference of opinion on. Where the true cross exists and who has it, there's very big debate amongst us. And the second is, does anyone know? The spear of Longitis. The spear that they say killed wal-'iyadhu billah, Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. They say the blood of God is on that spear. Wal-'iyadhu billah, right? So, you know, those are the two attested things. No, they believe wal-'iyadhu billah, Jesus himself is buried there. They believe Isa alayhi salam is buried in the Holy Church of Sepulchre, which is incredible for me, is because when I was there and they were explaining to me, and then the tour guide said, and then the next day we were walking down outside of Masjid al-Aqsa, and we go to this bottom area, and there's this church over there, and he says that here is also one opinion that the body of Jesus is. I said, imagine you went to Medina, and someone told you that this is where the Prophet ﷺ is, and then wal-'iyadhu billah said this is where the Prophet ﷺ could be too. There is no, and that's the ajib thing. There is no prophet besides Rasulullah ﷺ that we know for sure where their body is. Every other prophet that there is an opinion about their burial, it is just that perhaps that they are there. There's no guarantee. Besides Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and there is no difference of opinion. Besides one group of people, the Qadianis. The Qadianis believe that Musaylama al-Kadhab is a reincarnation of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They also believe that Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, didn't get killed on the cross, but he died in Kashmir. Yeah, that's their philosophy. One is Musaylama al-Kadhab, and then you have Musaylama Punjab. That is Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani. Anyhow, once the Muslims regain control and the Muslims have prominence in Jerusalem, that largely exists till the year 1099. And in 1099, the Crusaders come, and the Crusaders, they butcher 70,000 men, women, and children, Muslims and Yahud and Jews. And they banish all of them. I mean, they had flanked, and it became the Holy Crusades that freed the land of the Holy Lands. Because again, now in this Jerusalem, why is that? The Jews, it's important because of the Dome of the Rock. Also very interesting, is that there is a gravesite for King David, Dawood alayhi salam, which is also actually not his gravesite. It's actually known not to be his gravesite, but it's such a site of pilgrimage by the Yahud. And an interesting thing as well is that the grave of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, they identified the grave of Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ishaq alayhi salam, and it's in a place called Khalil. It's called Khalil, but they don't call it Khalil. You know what they call it? Anyone know their name for it? Hebron. Your Carrollton, Hebron Parkway. It's named after that. I think you see it on 121, right? When you're going 121, you see Hebron. It's named after this. It's named after the place where the cave of the patriarchs is. We're saying that Ibrahim alayhi salam, and they believe it's down. There's a cave underneath, and they believe that the grave of Ibrahim alayhi salam, Sarah, his wife, Ishaq, Rifqa, his wife, and Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam is there. And I don't have time to go into the detailed history of that, but that's why it's so special. Interesting for us, there is a alleged grave of Musa alayhi salam. Allah knows best. The one prophet we know for sure that was there, and even they say is there. And we know for sure he's buried there. But nobody knows where. Is which prophet? Sulaiman alayhi salam. He built Masjid al-Aqsa to its magnificence. And even they don't have a grave for King Solomon. Which I found very surprising, because we know, where did Sulaiman alayhi salam pass away? He passed away in the compound of Masjid al-Aqsa. Because while it was being built, his life came to an end, and he said, Ya Allah, let me die like this. And he had a staff, and there was a glass wall in front of him. The Quran talks about it. And Aqsa was being built by the jinns, because he had control over the jinns. And the jinns didn't know he died until they finished building Masjid al-Aqsa. And once they finished building Masjid al-Aqsa, a termite bit the staff of Sulaiman alayhi salam, and then he fell over, and they realized that Sulaiman alayhi salam has been dead for so long. And where does a prophet get buried? Where they pass away. So Sayyidina Sulaiman alayhi salam is buried in Masjid al-Aqsa, but not a soul knows where. Anyhow, so that's why it's important. The Christians, they believe that Jesus was crucified in Jerusalem. And they believe that while he was holding the cross, he stopped in few places to take rest, through the city. And those places, they have it marked. And they actually do Hajj to those places. And the Coptic Christians and stuff, they actually wear like ihrams, like straight up ihrams. And they come and they go to those passages as they're reliving wal'iyadu billah Isa alayhi salam's passage and his route. And they go to the Holy Church of Sepulchre, and that's where they believe that he is buried. Sayyidina Umar bin al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, when he was signing the declaration of Jerusalem and the conquest of it, the time of Dhuhr came. So the priest tells him, he says, why don't you come inside and pray inside? And Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu says, no, I'm good, I'll pray outside. And he said, why? Is something wrong with our church? Umar radiallahu anhu said, no. He said, if Umar prays in your church, they will say this church is blessed. This place is blessed. And they will raise your church to the ground. And they will build a masjid over here. So he prayed across the street. And across the street of the Holy Church of Sepulchre, there's a masjid called Masjid Umar bin al-Khattab. Radiallahu anhu. Incredible. I've prayed in that masjid, seen it. It's stunning. So the Christians have this connection to Jerusalem as well. They believe Jesus was born in this area, Bethlehem. They believe Jesus went to the Mount of Temptations and he lived his life and his ministry happened over here, and he was crucified, and it was held important to them. So from 1099, when the Crusades held control over it, they largely had expelled all Muslims and Jews from Jerusalem, and they had butchered them. Now, during the same time, about a century before, around the year 969, in Cairo, so this is about 30 years before, or about 130 years before the Crusaders conquered Jerusalem, there was a new dynasty in the Muslim Empire, the Fatimid dynasty. And for about 2 centuries, 2.5 centuries or 2 centuries, they reigned. And this was a Shia dynasty, 12er dynasty. And they were a very powerful dynasty. They even held control over Mecca, Medina, Masjid al-Aqsa, and across the Fatimid dynasty. And in this time, when Salahuddin Ayyubi, he was raised in the court of Nuruddin Zangi rahimahullah. And Nuruddin Zangi, I'll just say one quick story about him. If you've probably heard the story, Nuruddin Zangi rahmatullah alayhi came to Masjid al-Nabawi, Medina Munawwara, and in Medina Munawwara, while he was there and visiting, he saw a dream of the Prophet ﷺ. And in the dream, he said, the Prophet ﷺ showed him two men, and he said that, come and protect my grave. These two men are about to dig me out. And he showed them, and Nuruddin Zangi rahimahullah woke up, startled. Next day, he goes to sleep, sees the same dream. Third day, sees the same dream. So he made a dinner, and he called the entire Medina for the dinner. And he looked at everybody, and he didn't see those two people there. And he says, everyone? They said, yeah, this is everyone. He said, are you sure? He said, yeah. He said, there's just one group of people that live right by the masjid. He called everyone by the masjid. He said, people by the masjid, they're very pious and righteous, and they don't go anywhere. They're the only ones that haven't come. So he goes to their tent, and when he goes to their tent, he sees them there, and there's a sajada, the musalla, to pray. So he goes, he looks around, and then something puts in his heart, lift up the musalla. He lifts up the musalla, and underneath their grave, and underneath there, they found a hole, a tunnel, that went almost to the feet of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Nuruddin Zangi rahimahullah then put steel walls around the grave of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and those steel walls till today are existent. There was a very insane story that I heard. I won't mention the name of the student. One of our students, their father told me this just recently, not too long ago. His nephew or someone was an engineer, and he said that they were doing some checkups and so on. So he was permitted to go in to the chamber all the way underneath where the walls of Nuruddin Zangi rahmatullah. And he said when he was in that chamber, he said all of a sudden all the electricity went out. He said, and that guy was super scared, was because he's like, they don't allow any mistakes in this area. He's like, but alhamdulillah, nothing happened to him. So he said, and then he told me, he said he actually took a video of like right at that area. So I asked him to see it. He said he was going to get it from me and send it to me. But I asked him a question. I said, like, that's probably one of the closest people that have gone to the physical presence of Rasulullah. I was like, and how was that experience, being in such proximity, being an engineer and being, just to do those checkups of those wirings and stuff. But anyway, Rasulullah's, what's his name? Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi. He grew up around Nuruddin Zangi, and during this time that the Fatimid dynasty was existing, the Shi'i dynasty was existing, there was a situation where there was a lot of turmoil amongst them. And Nuruddin Zangi rahmatullahi alayhi had appointed Salahuddin Ayyubi, and his uncle Shirku was also a military general under Nuruddin Zangi rahmatullahi alayhi. And their job was, they fought in the different battles around Syria and Iraq. And Egypt was going through a turmoil. So Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi was in Egypt, and he was the person that was operating in Egypt and governing Egypt under the Fatimids. In the same time, the Fatimid king was appointed, who was an infant. So his brother or his cousin had the infant killed, who later on also got killed. And the line basically ended. And Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi in Egypt, across this empire that ranged for 2 centuries, he goes and he assumes, and with just a stroke of a pen, claims and says this was a massive Shia dynasty. Says, he adds, the Abbasids still existed in that era. So he adds the Abbasids to the khutbah, and he says from now on, this is a Sunni dynasty. And without single bloodshed, without a single person being killed, and being accepted in open arms from a dynasty that spanned multiple continents, he ended one of the largest and one of the most powerful, influential dynasties of Muslim history, that was Shia, without any bloodshed. And I was reading somewhere that they said, you know, people ask, is it man that shapes history, or circumstances and events that shape man? He said, in the story of Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullah alayh, he was a man of just immense, incredible presence and character. Whose children are these? Huh?
She's leaving.
Who's sleeping?
She's leaving.
Oh. If you're welcome to bring children in, but just keep your children with you, and in the next door, in the Nafisa space, you can still hear the lecture at that area. There's also games and stuff for the kids and all of that over there. So if they need, you can also open the Nafisa space for that. So that So now, same family? There's always new people. Huh? Different. So now, Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayh, he assumes control of Egypt. And while he assumes control of Egypt, now he makes his way and his attention to go and take over Masjid al-Aqsa and to liberate Masjid al-Aqsa. Knowing that this was the first time since the Muslims assumed control of Masjid al-Aqsa, till now, it was taken away when the Crusades came over. And there was a man by the name of Reynald. And Reynald did two things that had angered Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullah alayh. The first one was that Reynald, there were two kings of Jerusalem. One was Guy, his name was Guy. Not a guy, his name was Guy. Right? Guy had the Masjid al-Aqsa portion, and Reynald ruled over the coastal area of Jerusalem and Beirut and the Lebanon area. When the Hajis used to come, he used to rob the Hajis, attack the Hajis, and in one place he said, is your Muhammad gonna come and save you from me? And the second thing was that he had made a decision to take a ship and levy an attack on Medina Munawwara. It was on these two occasions that Salahuddin Ayyubi swore that I will kill him myself. There's a famous story of another person saying that, you know, is Muhammad going to come and save you? And Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullah heard about this, and he marched all the way, and he went and he avenged this one woman, and he said, you know, not Muhammad, but the lowest slave of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the lowest follower of his, has come to avenge him. While Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullah alayhi was advancing towards Jerusalem, there was a king, you probably heard of his name, Richard the Lionheart. Right? It's called Lionheart because he fought against Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi. Richard the Lionheart and all of the European forces, they sent all of their major knights, their you know this church across ISCC, right? That church actually stems from the lineage of churches established by King Guy. It's part of, if you read up on the history of the church, it will tell you that it's linked to the churches in the line of King Guy, and it represents them. They sent all of their armies, and Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi was to face them. And Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi had split the army into three parts. The center part he led, the west part his brother led, and the right part another commander was leading it. And this occurred by the area of the Golan Heights, so where the Lebanon attack and fight is happening. And this happened in the ending of June. It culminated on July 4th and July 5th. This was known as the Battle of Hittin. And this was the most incredible and devastating battle of Salahuddin Ayyubi's career. Because what he does is the Crusaders had an area that they were encamped at, and there was water. You need water. If you guys, it's a hot day. Again, this battle is happening when? In July, June, July. So it's going to be super hot outside. You're wearing military gear. The size of their army is about 20,000 people, and Salahuddin Ayyubi's is between 30 to 40,000 people. But these are also very skilled Roman and European warriors that are also very well funded. And you need water around you because you're going to get thirsty, battle, so on and so forth. Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi and Reynald and Guy, they had issues amongst themselves. And Allah talks about this in the Quran. تَحْسَبُهُمْ جَمِيعًا وَقُلُوبُهُمْ شَتَّى بَأْسُهُمْ بَيْنَهُمْ شَدِيدٌ. Together they seem very strong. You think their hearts are together. تَحْسَبُهُمْ جَمِيعًا وَقُلُوبُهُم شَتَّى. But their hearts aren't together. They're always fighting. Gallant is fighting Netanyahu, and Netanyahu is fighting Bennett, Naftali Bennett. And all of these people, they seem one. Biden is cursing Netanyahu, and Trump hates him over there. تَحْسَبُهُمْ جَمِيعًا وَقُلُوبُهُم شَتَّى. And their hearts are separated. So Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi, he knew this. So what he does is that he sends a portion of the army to go and attack on one of the coastal area. And his purpose was to separate Guy from the larger part of the army. Guy was a very seasoned leader as well. And Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi is successful in sowing those seeds of discord. And when Guy goes and dispatches with his group of people, Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi takes a garrison, wipes out the people that were by the fort, because he knew that if he attacked them and besieged them, right? Sieges very seldom work, because if you are in your own home, you have enough food to last you for months. What does the army have to do? The army is losing morale. You ever had to wait for someone to get ready or to come? Now you're just waiting days and days. You have to wait it out. It destroys the morale of the army, and it allows people. And when your army is sieging a group of people for long periods of time, what happens? Other parts of the empire are at risk. That's why sieges are not good ideas. And Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi knew this, so he said, I don't want to put my army into a siege. So when he segregates Guy's flank, he comes and then he completely surrounds them. They say that even if a cat was trying to escape, it would not be able to escape. There was no room. And there was a supply of water ahead. And he had completely left them so thirsty. And he had stationed archers that would shoot, so they couldn't even break away. If they tried to leave that area, they get shot and killed. They tried to go forward, shot and killed. And Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi's son talks about it, right? He says that, and Guy had his tent in the middle, and he was observing, and they were pushing Salah ad-Din Ayyubi's army back. As Salah ad-Din Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi, they need to hold their formation, and they put up a very incredible fight. So his son, Salah ad-Din Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi's son, is chronicling this. And by the way, on a side note, before I forget, there's an area in Masjid al-Aqsa where they talk about where Salah ad-Din Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi stayed in. And in Egypt, there is the fort, or like the fort of Salah ad-Din Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi. Anyone been to Egypt and seen it? You've seen it? It's magnificent. It's just stunning, right? And everywhere that I've seen where Salah ad-Din Ayyubi, and then the place Karak, those who've been to Jordan, Karak, we went to Karak. In Karak was also a place where Salah ad-Din Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi had a battle against them as well, right? And there's a place there as well where Salah ad-Din Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi oversaw. Every place that Salah ad-Din Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi put a fort or did a military campaign, you will notice that he stayed in a place where he had a bird's eye view of everything around him. I remember the first time I went to this castle in Karak. I don't think you guys went to Karak, or went to the castle. I was just driving, and I see this massive place, and I was like, this place looks too unique. And I stopped, and I went and I explored it, and that's when I found out this was Salah ad-Din Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi. And it just, everywhere this man is, he has a view of everything. Okay, so now his son, Salah ad-Din Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi's son, he says that, alhamdulillah, he said, we have defeated the infidels. He said, we have defeated their army. And Salah ad-Din Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi turns to his son, and he says, and then he said, my father turned to me and he said, stop speaking. He said, for we have not won until that man's tent does not fall. And then he said, and as my father said this statement, the tent of Guy fell. He's like, and that was the official moment of surrender. And what does Salah ad-Din Ayyubi rahmatullahi do? He said, then my father falls straight into sajda. He falls straight into sajda. There are about 12 kings and leaders. They're brought as captives to Salah ad-Din Ayyubi rahmatullahi. And Salah ad-Din Ayyubi rahmatullahi gives water to every one of them. And he gives it to Guy, and he doesn't give it to Reynald. And Guy takes his water. They're thirsty. They're literally, like, days they haven't had water. Mouth is parched. And Salah ad-Din Ayyubi was really smart too. They would burn the bushes in the area. So because of the smoke, it would make the throats even more dry. And at nighttime, to destroy their morale, they would spend the night in salah, reading the Quran out loud and reciting nasheeds. So like, these guys are having the time of their life, and these guys are dying of thirst. كانوا بالليل كانوا بالنهار فرسانا وبالليل قياما. That was what the Sahaba were in Salah ad-Din Ayyubi's army. By day, they were on the backs of horses, and at night, they were standing up praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The water is coming. Guy has the water. And everyone got water, and Salah ad-Din gives it, besides Reynald. And Guy's about to drink the water, so he sees Reynald didn't get it, and he gives it to Reynald. And Salah ad-Din hits the water, and he says, I didn't offer it to him. So in our tradition, if we give water to someone, that means that we're not going to kill that person. In the culture. He said, and you, Reynald, I made an oath twice that I would kill you myself. The first time when you attacked the Hajis, and you said, is Muhammad going to protect you? And the second was when you got your ships ready to attack Medina Munawwara. And with that, he took out his sword, And guy gave him water. So just sip the water. He said, I didn't give you the water. And he swiped the neck of Renault with one swipe. And he did it in a way that the neck of Renault got cut and the back was just dangling like this. And everything was just bursting out. And everyone around them was just shocked. They're thirsty, they see, and they're like, oh, we're about to get killed. Salahuddin turns to a guy and he says, we are kings. We don't deal with each other, but with grace. He said, but this one had went way out of line. He said, this one went out of line, and he lost the respect that a king holds. So Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi goes on, and now the other thing is, at the Battle of Hittin, from the 20,000 army that they had, almost everyone was decimated. So the Christian army that they had galvanized from Europe of their best warriors was wiped out by Salahuddin. To the point that I think it was Pope Urban, I think that was his name. I swear to God, this is in historical accounts, it's written. When he heard of the loss of the Battle of Hittin, he died out of shock. The Pope, he heard this of Salahuddin Ayyubi, then he saw Malik al-Maut right after, and he died of shock. This historical accounts that because the Battle of Hittin was the whole Europe against this one Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi. And Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi, then afterwards in October, around this month, is when he sieges Jerusalem. And then Jerusalem relinquishes itself and surrenders to Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi. And Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi, he's one of the people that even in the West, they speak about his honor and integrity. When there would be people in the other army that would get sick, he would send medics and food for them. Richard the Lionheart himself, in battle, got sick. And Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi, they used to correspond with each other. He sent not only medicine, food, but also a horse to Richard the Lionheart, so that he has something. And that's why he was so respected, was because anyone can show admiration and respect to the person who's your friend, but show it to the enemy, Allahu Akbar. Richard the Lionheart then and now they're trying to negotiate, how do we take over Jerusalem? Like, how do we end this war? Richard says, I will give my sister in marriage to your brother, and the dowry will be this the coast of Palestine, and they will remain as the king and queen of Jerusalem. So you have a Muslim king and a Christian queen. And Salahuddin Ayyubi was ready to accept it, to end the bloodshed. But the Christians, they were never to accept that. How could Richard the Lionheart's sister marry the Mohammedans? You know your Assassin's Creed? Did you play? This is after the Hashashin. There were the Shias, and there were the assassins that went and tried to kill Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi. Multiple times he escaped with his life. So the Christians did not want to accept this. And Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi then says, okay, the next would be that I will remain the Sultan and I will rule over this Jerusalem and the Muslims will, but you guys have free passage to come and do your pilgrimage and do your worship and live here. And they said, we agree to this. And then Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi alayhi, he ransomed them, and he said that 100,000 of your coins for 7,000 of these people. And they said, and they didn't have the money for it. They tried to pay off many people, and the remaining prisoners that were hostages that the Christians could not pay off, Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullahi from his own money paid it off and freed them. And when the people who were of the army, they were obviously not allowed to, because they would just fight back, right? They weren't allowed to do it. And the people that were the conscript warriors, the Christian ones from around Aqsa, they were also all put to death. And the reason was because they were all Muslims who converted to Christianity to fight them. So they were man baddala dinahu faqtuluhu, right? Based on that verse, had them all killed. So certain people he didn't ransom, right? And other people were non-combatant, he ransomed. The prisoners that were combatants that were not to be ransomed, right? Or were yet to be ransomed. One of them, I think her name was Sibylis, the wife of Guy, when she was going and she was crying, right? He saw these things and he would send his own people to assist them, and he would let the prisoners go and see off their families. And he said, whoever wants to leave, they can leave with their money and their wealth. Whoever wants to stay can stay too. His gracious, like Westerners seldomly talk positively about a man. Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullah alayh. But he was a muttaqi, he was a righteous man. He was a pious man. He liberated Aqsa. If Aqsa is to be free and our brothers and sisters to be free, it is taqwa. It is taqwa. When Jerusalem was being attacked and the Crusaders came and took it over, the Turks still existed. The Seljuks still were around. The Abbasids were there. But everybody was quiet. And then you have Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullah alayhi that says, no, I'm going to earn the respect of my enemies. And I will take Aqsa. And I will liberate and free Aqsa. And he allows the Yahud and the Jews and everyone to come back into Aqsa after that. Anyhow, inshallah, maybe one of the days we'll do like a deep dive into Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullah alayhi and kind of show you guys where all of his battles and these things took place. I'll mention some of his quotes. He says, and this just shows kind of how bold he was. He died, by the way, in, I believe, Damascus, and he died penniless. He died without any money, very broke, and it shows how he didn't keep anything for himself. He says, لو أن الموت أتاني لولا أن الموت أتاني لجعلت كل الدول الأوروبية إسلامية. He says, had death not come to me, I would have turned every European country Muslim. كيف أبتسم والأقصى أسير. How can I smile? He seldom smiles. How can I smile while Aqsa is in chains? Aqsa is imprisoned. That it not only does he eat it away from him, but he does something about it. I mean, to be able to flip the Fatimid dynasty and then liberate Aqsa from all the European powers, the breadth of what Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullah, and with one is sheer diplomacy, second, sheer military might. This is a man that really knows how to deal in circumstances and situations, and a person can only do that if they rely, because you have to have trust in Allah. You don't have cameras, videos, no. You have to rely and trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says, لو شعرت ببعد الناس عنك أو بوحشة أو غربة فتذكر قربك من الله. He says, if you see that people are not close to you, you don't have friends, people don't like you, he said, remember how close you are to Allah. If you're close to Allah, it doesn't matter who else doesn't talk to you, who's far for you, who's not. If you're far from Allah, doesn't matter who is near you. As long as you have Allah, you have someone that is loyal to you. And if you are not loyal to Allah, how can you imagine anyone else to be loyal to you? He said, كُلُّ عَسِيرٍ إِذَا اسْتَعَنْتَ بِاللَّهِ فَهُوَ يَسِيرٌ. He says, everything is difficult. But when you ask Allah help, it becomes easy. It sounds so simple. But when you are thinking of a man like him, fighting an entire continent's army, a major religion, where everyone is fighting for that, it's like fighting for Medina. It's like fighting for Makkah for them. And you are faced against these people, and you are saying, كُلُّ عَسِيرٍ إِذَا اسْتَعَنْتَ بِاللَّهِ فَهُوَ يَسِيرٌ. Every difficulty, ask Allah for help, and that thing will become easy for you. He said, إِذَا تَعَسَّرَتْ أُمُورَكَ وَخَالَجَتْكَ الْهُمُومِ وَالْأَحْزَانِ. He said, if things in your life start becoming difficult, and sadness and grief and anxiety and depression begins to overcome you, فَاتَّقِ اللَّهِ, fear Allah, فَهُوَ كَفِيلٌ بِتَفْرِيجِ هَمِّكَ, for He is responsible to remove your pain, وَتَيْسِيرِ أُمُورِكَ, and He can make easy all of your problems. Turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and know that He has the key to the things that are locked in your life. And in another place similar to this word, he says, إِذَا حُسِرْتَ بِالْأَوْهَامِ وَالْوَسْوَاسِ وَالْقَلْبِ وَالْمُخَاوَفِ فَاجْعَلْ لِسَانَكَ رَطَبًا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Constantly mention Allah's name, and you'll find peace come inside in your heart. This is really powerful. لا يوجد ما يستحق الندم غير ما يضيع من العمر في هذا الندم. He says nothing. You shouldn't regret anything but the moments in life that you have regretted. You shouldn't regret but the days in life you've regretted. Meaning that you sat there thinking to yourself all about the dunya, regretting the dunya, regretting the dunya. He's saying that's the only thing you should regret. Why are you wasting your life thinking about things that are outside of your control? If it was meant to be, it happened. If it wasn't meant to be, it didn't happen. Move on. My Ustad Mufti al-Haq once said something very powerful. There was a person who got divorced, and they had a small kid, and it was a difficult time. And I was talking to Mufti al-Haq, and one of his students, and he quoted Mufti al-Haq, and he said, and that Shaykh mentioned, he said, I was married and I got divorced, and I went to Mufti Sahib, and Mufti Sahib told me a statement, and he said, I always remember it. And Mufti Sahib was a man of few words. So Mufti says something, he just says it, and it's just powerful. He said, Ek waqt aayega, is afsoos pe afsoos ho. He said, a time comes you will regret this regret. You will regret wasting your time on this. It's meant to be, alhamdulillah. Wasn't meant to be, alhamdulillah. Move on with life. Leave it in Allah's hands. Don't sit there worrying about things outside of your control. Build a relationship with the one who has everything in his control. He says, Wallahi, I am shy in front of Allah. I'm embarrassed that I smile while my brothers are being tortured and are being killed. I'll end off on this last statement over here. Inna arda aslafina la tuba'u bil-dhahabi wat-darahim. The land of our fathers will not be sold for gold or silver. وَلَقَدْ حَسَلْنَا عَلَى كُلِّ شِبْرٍ مِّنْهَا بِبَذْلِ دِمَاءِ أَجْدَادِنَا وَلَنْ نَفْرِطْ بِشِبْرٍ مِّنْهَا قَبْلَ أَنْ نَبْذَلْ كُلَّ دِمَائِنَا دِفَاعًا عَنْهَا. He said, every foot of our land we got and attained by the blood of our forefathers. He said, and we will not give up our land, but with the blood that we have to offer. لِمَاذَا نَتْرُكَ الْقُدْسِ? Why should we abandon Quds? إِنَّهَا أَرْضُنَا. It is our land. فِي كُلِّ وَقْتٍ وَفِي كُلِّ زَمَانٍ فَهِيَ مِنْ مُدَنِنَا الْمُقَدَّسَةِ وَتَقَعُ فِي أَرْضٍ إِسْلَامِيَّةٍ وَلَا بُدَّ أَنْ تَظِلَّ الْقُدْسِ لَنَا. He says, why should we not defend the Quds? Why should we not protect Quds? It was ours, it's our land, it is our time, it is our era, and it belongs to us. And that is why Aqsa and the people, obviously, they hear the stories of Salahuddin Ayyubi rahimahullah all the time. It's a very powerful reminder for them. But it definitely speaks volumes of the mentality and the constant thought that he had of the lands and the situation of the Muslims, and the incredible things that he accomplished. He conquers Damascus without any bloodshed. They hand over the keys to him. And he rules over a large part of the Ayyubi dynasty, spawns from him. And he's a man of honor, integrity, and a man of knowledge, a man of Quran, a man of dhikr, and a man who spends all of his time to make something important. And Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullah alayh, we are all looking for a Salahuddin Ayyubi. And everyone has the ability to be Salahuddin Ayyubi. But you have to fight your nafs first before you can fight him in the battle. The first battle is the battle of the nafs. Then is the battle of Hiddin. First you have to siege your nafs before you can siege Jerusalem. The inner battles that you conquer allow you to conquer all the battles outside. But if you are defeated by yourself, you can't conquer anyone else. Any questions? Inshallah, we have a few minutes left. On this topic or any topic.
Why does vomiting, when it's not in your control, break your wudu?
Full mouth?
Even if it's not full mouth.
The way you know it's full mouth is when you can't hold it back.
Even if it's like a little bit like.
So the scholars that write in the books of Hanafi fiqh, they say that vomiting, if it's full mouth, it breaks wudu. How are you going to measure full mouth and half mouth, right? If you can hold it, then it is less than full mouth. If you can't hold it and you just blurt it out, then it is then it is full mouth if you blurt it out. And that is because it's excessive. It's a lot. There's many times when a person is eating or something or brushing their teeth, what happens if they go too down into their throat? Some little parts will come out. So the exiting of and the food that goes inside you, if a little bit comes out, it's technically not impure, right? But when there's a lot of it comes out, that means it came down from a much deeper area, more deeper into the body, which perhaps could have, now intermingled with the impurities inside. And a metaphysical idea of why do we do wudu when we vomit. If it's a little bit, Allah forgives the minute details. But a person just, an animal or risk of Allah came inside you, you chewed it and you spat it out, and now it's not useful to anyone else. So out of a reflection of purity from the action, you are doing wudu. Anyone else? No questions?
How did he die?
Salahuddin Ayyubi rahmatullah alayh? No, he was like about 55, 56 years old. But just had deterioration of health. He didn't die in battle. Deterioration of health. And he passed away. In Damascus, I believe.
Do you recommend any books for the old history of Palestine as well as like the recent history of Palestine?
Any
Or
books
materials?
in the old history of Palestine and the new history of Palestine? I was in Masjid al-Aqsa and someone gave me a PhD of theirs, a thesis of theirs, or a book that they had written on the history of Aqsa. And I had browsed through that, and I believe I might have it in my office. And that was very, very good. I can't recall the name, but remind me, I'll post it. But off the top of my head, I can't think of a specific or a particular book, but text me, inshallah. I'll look into it. The old and the new history.
People are hoping for Salahuddin to come now, but with the nuclear warfare, there's no place for Salahuddin, right?
No, so I think there's at the end of the day, nuclear warfare is something that, inshallah, bi'idhnillah, is something that won't practically happen, because this world's God, the secular world's God, is money. And a nuclear warfare destroys money and wealth. The world that they exist in is the world of slavery. They believe in it. These people have been enslaving people for centuries, to the point that when, the British, their most valuable colonies were Jamaica and Haiti, because of the sugar in there. And they realized that the cost of housing and feeding them far exceeds the cost of working them till death and bringing a new slave in their place. Their mentality, they worked those slaves till death, and they would bring more slaves from Africa and Congo and these places. A lot of them were Muslims. They believed that 60-70%, if not more, of the slaves brought into the Western world from Africa were Muslim, right? So if you want to understand somebody, you have to understand their philosophy. What does America, what does all of these people in all these places, what do they thrive in, right? They thrive. These warmongers in DC, they like war because they can, but not annihilation. Because annihilation will end in wars. So it doesn't profit. These are things that people keep as their security and whatnot, but I genuinely believe in the best, and I believe that inshallah things won't go to that level, because this is the systematic approach of these type of things, and I mean their warfare can be very meticulous and to the point. They don't need to go beyond these things, right?
They don't need to finish it all.
They don't. Otherwise, all of these countries have the abilities. The fact that no one is taking drastic steps, what does it show to you? Their God is money, and not like. So when people are of that philosophy, they're not going to be very focused on this type of warfare, in my opinion.
So inshallah, chance for Salahuddin to.
I believe that the Salahuddin that needs to come Salahuddin means, Salah means, right? His name was Yusuf. Salahuddin is a title. The one who rectified the deen. If you and I are not beholden to our deen, as I mentioned, before Salahuddin fought the battle of Hittin, he fought the battle of the nafs. Before he sieges Jerusalem, he sieged his nafs. Right? He imprisoned that. Once you can conquer your inside, then you can conquer the world. But if you're defeated every day, the Muslim that keeps on getting defeated by their desires cannot conquer and rule anything outside.